The Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to the 12, "A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I also will deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. There we go again, looking for life in all the wrong places. We're often led to believe that fullness of life can be found at the top of that ladder to success, or in a happy marriage, or by raising a family. Some seek abundant life at parties, or in winning the lottery, or in driving an expensive car, or wearing the latest fashions. Some think a full life can be found in having lots of friends, or reading lots of books, watching movies, or fine dining. Some pursue fullness through health, recreation, and fitness, and still others look for it in their passion for a given hobby, sports team, or travel to exotic places, or any number of other endeavors. And though much of life can be found in all of these places, each of them also serves as a door to this paradox. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for Jesus' sake will find it. We paradoxically only find fullness of life when we give ourselves away as God's servants in the world. The found life that Jesus speaks of exists in being a part of something bigger than oneself. So are you ready to start looking for fullness of life where God has hidden it? Someplace so close and yet so far away when we're off looking for it in all the wrong places. Where is this fullness of life hidden? Of course, it's right inside your servant heart. Jeremiah reminds us today how gut-wrenching this business of being a servant of the Lord can be. This is especially true when one is called to speak God's truth that others might find difficult to hear. Jeremiah says that when he tries to remain silent, there's something like a burning fire shut up in his bones that he grows weary from holding in. but he has to be true to his prophetic call. He can't hold the fire in the fire of the Spirit, which gives voice to God's ways of justice. The same Spirit can become like a fire in our bones when we hold back from our call to do justice and to be a voice for the voiceless. We might try to hold the fire in, ignore it, hope it'll go away, or we might even busy ourselves with a myriad of distractions. Yet deep down in our bones, the fire for God's ways of love and justice continues to burn until on a given day, maybe this day, we, like Jeremiah, grow weary of holding it in. We're finally ready to say yes to what we've been created for. Yes, to being sent for Jesus' sake into the world as a healing, life-enhancing presence through both our words and our deeds. Today just might be the day that we're ready to proclaim from the housetops God's love for all creation that we once heard whispered as we hiked by a stream. Or maybe we're ready to announce that adequate housing and health care, food security, clean water, safe communities, and educational opportunities should be readily available to all peoples of the earth. Or maybe, just maybe on this Pride Sunday, we'll voice our advocacy for those who've been persecuted for their sexual orientation, trans or binary gender roles. Today, the fire of God's welcoming love for all who have been created in God's image burns within us, empowering us to confront unjust legislation, bullying, and all forms of persecution. I listened for the first time this week to a podcast titled Finding Our Way, hosted by Prentice Hemphill. This episode was an interview last summer with Alak Vaid-Menon, an acclaimed author, performer, and public speaker who grew up in Texas and was shunned and bullied for being the unique, gifted, transgendered person they were created to be. I think it's important for us to hear a word on Pride Sunday from a person who's experienced the trauma that Pride celebrations seek to counter. But first, a note about the use of that word pride. In today's context, as we use it, it's not the egotistical pride of accomplishments or skill in being so much better than others, but rather proud of being the unique, sacred being that we've been created to be. Of course, that's something for us all to be proud of. Now back to that podcast. I discovered in Alak's sharing a deep spiritual center forged out of their pain. In Alak's own words, compassion continues to save my life, and actually it feels like it fills me. I feel like the cost was actually when I was dwelling on the toxicity, when I was a receptacle for malice. And then when I freed myself of that and I said, you don't get to contaminate the world I'm building in my heart and in my friendships. There's only room for peace here, for inner peace. I became free in a way that I didn't think was possible. Now, a lot goes on. And it's strange to me because I feel like compassion often gets framed as benevolence for others, but I want to reframe it as a kindness for the self. And I want to reframe it that the other and the self are not separate. The work that I'm trying to do now around compassion that feels even more difficult than forgiveness for people who are cruel to me is forgiveness for me being cruel to me. This is the hardest compassionate work. Now, Locke's words ring true for me. How about you? If you listen to my preaching, then you've probably heard me sharing how God's ways of compassion and justice run counter to the ways of empire that so often result in conquest and exploitation of whole groups of people. Now, Locke got me to wondering about the role that stratification of gender plays here. So here's a bit more of what Locke says. Gender is separating us from meaning and connection and truth. And I think this is where the history piece becomes really important. Gender, as we know it, was forged in the context of 19th century conquest. It stripped the mystical, spiritual, communal, and collective understanding of gender, and it mechanized and utilized our bodies in the service of reproducing violence and empire. So the journey of transition that the world sees in me is that I went from being assigned male at birth to being trans feminine. But that's not the true transition. The true transition was I went from being a body to a soul. Transness, Locke says, transness for me was chiefly and fundamentally about reconnecting with my spirituality, reconnecting with ancestry and ecology, being able to recognize that my body is a part of a divine continuum and is precious and sacred. Being able to see the magic of gender, not just the mechanism and machinery of it. And Locke continues a little bit more. So the work that I'm doing to transcend the gender binary is not merely so that we can acknowledge and include non-binary people, create a third category or an other, more options to pick from. The work that I'm trying to do is actually to say, how do we normalize, not just normalize, but romanticize a world that told us this is who you should be forever? That's not a world I'm interested in being in, and I'm not either, for that matter. Again, Locke continues a little more. The world I'm interested in being is one that asks, show me what you want to be. Experiment, figure it out. Manifest and femifest. Let me witness your continual becoming. Transition as a mode of continual becoming without destination. Maybe even finding our way. I want to layer Locke's rich wisdom with a few of the sayings from Jesus that we heard in our gospel. Alice McKenzie, who teaches at Perkins Seminary in Texas, says that there's a whole string of beads of wisdom sayings here strung together in today's gospel. And so here are just a few of those beads of wisdom sayings with my brief commentary attached. First bead. A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? We will face opposition just as Jesus did, just as Jeremiah did, just as all in the LGBTQIA plus community do. Expect it. According to the New York Times, this year alone, 17 states have enacted bans or significant new restrictions on some or all gender-affirming care for minors, most ending the use of cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers. And among those 17 states, 4 of them border Illinois. 3 times in our passage, Jesus says, "Do not fear." I wonder what fears lie behind such legislation. Faith is our antidote to fear. And fearlessness is the foundation for the peace, that inner peace that allows us to extend compassion even to those who oppose us. Second B, nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing is secret that will not become known. So keep in mind that the words and deeds of those who persecute our LGBTQIA plus siblings will be revealed and judged in due time. God's truth will prevail. Evil falls of its own weight, so let's align ourselves with God's ways of compassion, welcome, and justice. Third B, what I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Pay attention to that spark of fire deep in your bones. It very well may be the voice of God coming into being through you. Fourth B, even the hairs of your head are counted. You are of infinite worth to God who knows you through and through. You are God's beloved, created in God's own image. And so is everyone you meet. Begin from a place of compassion for yourself. And may our whole lives spring forth from being God's beloved, blessed children. Fifth B, you heard this at the beginning. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Finding one's life through fame, fortune, or any other means will always come up short. True life can only be found in our ongoing transformation, dying and rising, being sent as God's servants into the world. So what's the burning passion within you for God's ways of compassion, equity, and justice? What rooftop might you find yourself on this week, proclaiming the life-giving word that God has hidden within you? Maybe it's over lunch with a coworker, or an email or voicemail to someone in public office. Maybe it will take the form of volunteering at a nonprofit that you're passionate about. That fire within grows in intensity through our connection with a community of faith as folks support and encourage one another. Here we can help each other in that sacred task of discerning how God's whispering voice is already fanning a fire in our bones. Here we can share the beads of wisdoms that we have found that guide and empower us to be servants of Christ. Here we provide a safe place of welcome for each other to continue in our ongoing transformations. We can take pride in one another's being and becoming. From now on, from this day on, may the fires of God's justice burning in our bones be the catalyst for how we live. And it might just be that in doing so, we'll finally be looking for the fullness of life in the only place that it truly can be found. And when we find it, I believe that our God will be quite proud. Amen.